This is The Pillars, the Porch, and the Path, the podcast that invites you to join two Mississippi mystics and real-life sisters as we build the pillars of our craft and share all of the ways we use our intuitive gifts and spiritual tools to create an intentioned spiritual life full of abundance, prosperity, laughter, and fulfillment. It doesn't matter your lineage or magical tradition. We understand how lonely it is out there for new mystics, witches, and hoodoos. So just know this, you are welcome and wanted here in this magical and charmed corner of Beyonce's internet. If you're ready to create a holistic and modern spiritual lifestyle that respects your uniqueness and embraces eclecticism, you're in the right place. Now let's get into it. We know you've been waiting for this particular series since the podcast began. Love is in the air, it's clearly on y'all's heart, and Andy and I are here for you with another comprehensive 3-part series on love magic. In this week's episode, we're starting with our biggest, most important love organ, your beautiful, bodacious brain. This is the most crucial step in initiating any spell work, and in this episode, we share our best advice on how to get your mind right for all of this juicy love and relationship spell work that's to come. Drag out your favorite tarot and oracle cards, get your hands on one of Tallulah O's self-love candles, because per usual, this week's episode has it all. Rose petals, pink Himalayan sea salt, and the lover's card. Oh my. Let's get into love magic on this brand new episode of The Pillars, the Porch, and the Path. Hey y'all, it's Halicue.
And ANDI.
Welcome back to The Pillars, the Porch, and the Path. This is episode 2 of our brand new season 4 of the show. And we are going straight from talking about, the wheel of the year, coming of spring, into love and relationship work. This is going to be a 3-part series, just like road opening, just like prosperity. And Andy's giving me this side eye, like what? Like this, like she wasn't involved in every aspect of the show planning. And now that she's here, she's aggravated. Andy feels like I'm making us talk about love and love work under duress, but we are absolutely going to talk about it. This is the first part 1 of our series on love and relationship. And specifically, it's going to be on getting your mind right, preparing your mind, and hoping your body and your spirit for doing love work. My first question here is why I love love work. And Andy asked me, do you love love work? And I was like, oh, let me think about that. I remember my maiden years so much. I remember wanting to fall in love, being excited about falling in love. I'm in the house with 2 girls, so love and everything pink and golden and glitter and all of that is all around me right now. So, but it also causes me to reflect. I'm almost 50 years old, so I reflect on my life. I'm excited to talk about it because this is what the people want to talk about. Like, we'll get into it a little bit. But for me, when I talk and I think about love, this has been a 35-year journey for me. And in many ways, I do love talking about love. I'm Taurus ascendant. I'm a Leo, which is, like Sun and Leo in the 4th house. So much about me is ruled by and led by the heart. I'm Taurus ascendant. So there's that Venusian element. Like I love the sights, smells, and the sounds of love. But I'm not some 20, 21, 22-year-old practitioner out here. Like I'm a woman that's been in a committed relationship for a very long time. I understand the ups and downs. So do I love love work? I love the opportunity to help people start from a good foundation for love work because of my own personal history. But Andy, that's kind of where I'm coming from. Where are you coming from with this? And what's your take on our why it's important to talk about love work? She's about to say something crazy.
You're going to make me leave my front yard so I can go talk about this in the way that it needs to be talked about. There is a divide in our spiritual community usually over whether or not you like or don't like to do love work. Put it like this. It harkens back to my days as a lawyer when I explain to people that there is nothing more visceral, nothing that will bring people to the craziest behavior than your love you have for someone else, whether it's your child, your spouse, your partner, whoever it is. Of course, like the wind picks up right when I start talking. Because that spirit out here saying, you got that right, girl. And I think
Spirit's like, y'all sure y'all want to do this topic?
are you listening? The problem I see is that because it is so viscerally attached to what we want and what we desire in our own mind, we have a tendency to not listen to messages about love work. We spend a lot of time trying to manifest what we think love is before we go through that process of learning. So I'll explain myself a little bit. If I was going to start working with Allegua, right? I wouldn't run to the store, get a whole bunch of shit, throw up some red and black candles, and start just throwing nonsense at people, right? Open doors for me, protect me from such and such, blah, blah. All of us would cringe on the inside in the spiritual community if I did that. Just like if I was practicing voodoo and said, let me go get 20, V's, let me, just start hanging out at parties, let me dress in all white, and go to the French Quarter on the weekends. Half of our spiritual community would be up in arms because they would say that's not the depths of our work, right? That's not what we do. That is a caricature and surface of what we do. That's how I feel about love work. I feel like people want the results of love work to match what they want in their minds, but they don't put the preparation, the work, the readiness into it that most spiritual practitioners are going to tell you require for love work, or that you constantly need to put into yourself for love work. Like there's some thing they come to us for that they think we can manifest based on what's going on inside of their heads. And a lot of times love is based on not just what you want, but what you need, what you're willing to provide, what you're willing to give, what another person's with. There's all these factors. It's not just what you want, right? So just like you wouldn't come to me and say, Andy, I want to go a car, manifest it, because I'm not a genie in a bottle. That's kind of why I think a lot of practitioners get frustrated with love work. Because love work, a lot of times people who come to us who look for love work, they're very interested in the result. They're very interested. You got that face on because you've had readings like this, right? Where you get to the point you're like, I'm not going to take your money anymore. Or we're just not going to discuss it anymore because it's not good for you. It's not good for me. It becomes like crazy energy. And I think that's why. So I think it's important that we talk about love work. But like, to be transparent, when you ask me, do I love work? I love making the tools for love work. Sometimes I don't love some of the conversations that we have about love work. And I'll tell you why, because it makes me feel like a lawyer again. It sometimes when you have to have those tough conversations with people about relationships or how they're approaching relationships, it can be difficult. So I think sometimes that's why you get that mixed reaction to it. I think some people are suited to it. They're great for doing it. But I think somehow people think our relationship to love work is going to be different than how we approach other work. And it isn't. And it's because it's so personal to people and they want so badly to get these things, and I get it, right? As someone who has love in my life, someone who is looking for love in other areas, I get it. It's very visceral and personal. That's why we tell you to start with who? Tell it to me. Why do we say who you start with? Who you start
with? Me, myself, and I.
Exactly.
You start with you.
That's why. So that's my take on it.
I do feel like we come to the work with a mental squint. You're right. Because when you talk about your career as a lawyer, I think about my career in domestic violence, sexual assault, reproductive health. When people first come to us, because it's a thing that people, that most people, I think, originally, the first time they think about consulting, like an intuitive or a psychic or someone that, is an intention to like maker. It's because they want to make something happen, when we know that the real work is right in here. People ask me all the time, like, you must, I don't know, Andy, people ask you this, like, you must know your husband's chart up and down. I'm like, nah, what? Like, not really. It's important for me to know my chart up and down. It's important for me to know, myself, my own motivations, where I'm coming from. So anyway, this is all to say that's some of the reasons, like if Andy and I come to this from a mental squint, it's because professionally in our muggle careers, we're coming from okay, how dysfunctional is this situation? Like, is this in any way, a relationship that is fair, equitable, where people share power? And 9 times out of 10, that is not the case. So if it seems like we're coming to this with a little bit of restraint, a little bit of a mental squint, that's because of just our age and experience. We've seen a lot. We've counseled people through a lot. We have respectively gone through a lot. We have much younger sisters that are in the, beginning stages, the chapters of their love life. We have children that are going to be starting their adventures with love. So, Andy and I think Andy, I speak for both of us when we're like, all right, everybody, when we think about like love work, we want to start with, okay, everybody calm down and let's start and focus on you. And with that being said, Andy, I'm gonna go ahead and pull a tarot card for us for this show as a message for our listeners, our audience. I'm shuffling. Let's see what I got for us today. That's our tarot message. All right. Spirit wants us to contemplate as we get ready to open our conversation on love and getting your mindset right for love work. The card. Oh, the Nine of Wands. Andy, look, can you see the card? The Nine of Wands is, y'all done been through it. We done been through it. Look at the cards.
About right. That's
about right. The Nine of Wands. Ooh, we've been through it. I don't know if this is about us or if this is about y'all, but we have, I don't think there's a single person that's listening that has not gone through some things. This is the Nine of Wands. Just, if you've got your deck with you, go to your deck and pull out the Nine of Wands or pull it up on your favorite app. We see this central figure. Behind them, they've got 8 wands standing up and they're holding one in their hands. These wands have made a bit of a barrier. It looks almost like a fortress, like a fort, and they're standing in front of it, guarding it. And if you'll notice the bandage around the figure's head, that almost always means that in the past and on our journeys, there's been some wounding. There's been some psychic, some emotional, some psychological.
Or as my boys would say, some murder stabbing has happened at some point in time.
It's funny because it's true. I laugh because Andy and I have both been in long-term relationships. Good grief. Andy married her freaking high school sweetheart, Captain Courtney Anderson. I've been married for 26 years.
I married my high school sweetheart at 32 after I've had a full-ass life and a child. So, because there is a weird group of people who met people at 18 that they felt they knew well enough to marry. And bless y'all. Yeah. If you're still together, if you're not, I understand why. Because that's a lot to ask of people. So I just differentiate that because, we ain't jump out of high school and get married. We actually got married much later in life after I'd had a life, he'd had a life. So I like to say that because when I look at that picture, it reminds me of something that me and Courtney talk about often. And in our family, both of ours collectively, we did not have good examples of good marriages. We did not. We've talked about this often. Like if you look at, and especially, and that's why I hate to have this conversation. And I'm saying this for a purpose. Because lots of times we talk about love work and we start talking from the perspective of like our most current relationship and how that reflects on how we participate in love work. I will tell you that my most current relationship is a reflection of all the work I did on myself to not have what I saw in front of me. So just know that when we start talking about love work, and I'm so glad we're starting with the focus of self, that I think that's a mistake. I think sometimes people always look at, well, Q's got a husband, Andy's got a husband. They seem to be relatively happy, so they must know the secret to marriage. I will tell you, anyone who, or this person's in a great relationship, or they always have someone to go on a date with. They always have someone who's taking care of them. This person must be great at making love connections. When we talk about love work, let's establish that. There's different phases of love for everyone. Halicue started talking about in her 20s as a maiden. She was out here looking for love. She wanted a love match. Some of us wasn't. Some of us was ready to get in them streets, and we was about them streets. We wanted to sample. I like a little of that. Can I get a little of this? Does that come with whipped cream? I try some of that.
Fries?
Exactly.
Because I like the spicy curly fries with that.
Exactly. Please. So some of us were out there at the buffet, as I like to call it. We were at the buffet. So there's different aspects to that, and what your goal is, right? At the end of love, we put these institutional things on it, like, oh, you're looking for marriage, you're looking for a relationship, you're looking for love, like even some of this mystical stuff that you're looking for, like a twin flame or whatever.
Oh my God, do not.
Sometimes love, when we talk about love as an emotion, we have to first of all understand like love exists separate than your human person in consciousness, right? There are animals that mate together for life. There are a lot of scientists that say, okay, well, can we use that as an example of what we think love ought to be? Well, nature has a million examples of that. Like some animals mate for life, some animals mate with a lot of people. Some animals mate with a lot of people, but then come in, like penguins have same sex couples and adopt other penguins, right? Like,
Yeah.
so when we talk about the science of love, or we start talking about relationships, or like who we should couple up with, it almost makes me think about like teaching math by trying to learn what the answer is first. It's not a natural way to learn about love. Love is the operation of understanding what the emotion is first, right? What does that emotion mean to you? What is what that emotion means to you now? Is it a fair definition? Did you get that
Yeah.
definition through like a weird lens? I did. My lens was the lens of divorce.
Yeah.
Blackness in the
Yeah.
80s, right? Like there's a lot of things
Yeah.
that colored like how I defined like love. We didn't have the
Yeah.
internet. Nobody was online when we were first dating in high
Yeah.
school, right? It was a completely different atmosphere,
Yeah.
home, school, wherever, that we were talking and living and learning about love, right?
Yeah.
I tell people, you want to get a good understanding on how random and diverse our ideas of love are. Ask someone what their favorite love song is. You're going to get 1,000 different answers, 1,000 different genres, 1,000 different beats, rhythms, patterns to it. And that's how it should be, because love is different for everyone. So I love that we're starting this conversation with that tarot pool, but I think that enclosure and looking at it from the Nine of Wands.
And he's like, I think what that jail looks like. That
Well,
fortress.
we start by putting ourselves in this jail because we put all these weird boundaries on love before we even start the conversation of where it is, right? Like I kind of feel like that dude with the bandage on with the stick is like, fuck, why does everybody keep trying to get in this circle? This is not the right circle for love. This could be the absolute wrong place that you want to be. Like I'm trying to keep the terrible shit in here and you still keep trying to get in there. I think sometimes we just start our conversations about love in the wrong place. That is harassing that dude, because and I hate to say that about tarot imagery, but that's sometimes when I think about those cards that literally when you look at it, it's just chaos. I'm like, we usually, our normal way of coming to love and thinking about love is usually our stumbling block to begin with. So I'm glad we're having this. I'm glad we started with the Nine of Wands, because I feel like that dude just talking about it. I feel like that dude with a stick just talking about it, right? Like, why y'all keep beating me up
Oh,
over love?
I know. Why's Halicue? Why we got to talk about this? It's so funny. Because for some people, you're right. Some practitioners, this is all they want to talk about. And I do love love, and I love talking about love. Like as a mother with my little maidens in the house, like they're dating right now. I'm dropping people off for their little playground, hamburger, ice cream dates, and dropping them off and picking up. And I'm trying to be optimistic, letting them know, trying to educate them, providing support at the same time, being like, now listen, if what you're trying to rely on is a preteen or a teenage boy or girl
But
to help you find answers, like, yeah, no, it starts with you.
where
What
did
do
that
you
approach
want?
come from? Why do you approach it that way with your daughter?
Because of the crazy mess I've gone through, like over the years, through my life, and the crazy mess I have seen, and we have seen. I have to tell y'all, as mothers, I think one of the biggest challenges Andy and I face is how in this short amount of time, because now that we live the spiritual life, we understand the power of decades, the power of practice, being an ancestor. And Andy and I feel like we're having to do a lot of real powerful work and a lot of in really, really tiny amounts of time to try to make some tiny incremental changes. But we want y'all to know we got you. We're here for you. Andy is right. The look on the figure's face and the Nine of Wands to me is a message about, we have been through it. And you know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of, do you remember in the book, Dr. Sleep, where Danny has kind of learned to take those old nightmares and old ghosts and lock them in boxes and put the box away. That's what I kind of feel like those wands look like and represent, like all the nightmares, the ghosts, the folks from our past, the old relationships. We just want to let y'all know we understand. We've got y'all, whether it was Andy's like career in law and law enforcement. Oh my God, the horror stories we have heard over the years from our mom, like people that are judges and other officers of the court, these awful things. We're here for you. We got you. It's one of the reasons we love our spirituality. Oh, Andy wants to add it. Andy wants to add a tidbit.
I want to say that about my legal career because I was very different, and my mom was a very different type of lawyer, I think, in my opinion. Because, lawyers, a lot of our bread and butter in small towns is your divorce, right? I hate to say it, but that's 75% of the population gets divorced because we put, more emphasis on the day than we do the prep for it. Like, that's just our society we live in. But
Indeed.
I say that to say that I also worked for a female lawyer that also spent a lot of time explaining to people like, girl, why are you getting divorced? You might be looking at this wrong. Like, your husband's away 6 months out of the year. He works offshore. This is perfect marriage. We strive for this marriage every day. There's somewhere where your husband can send that check home and be gone 6 months out the year and come back. Girl, you better make that. But then again, now I know women who have been married to offshore folks. And if you want affection and attention and intimacy, that's not the perfect marriage, right?
Yeah.
So I say that to say that even though we say that, with lawyers and judges, you hear these awful stories, we also hear these awful stories of people who shouldn't be breaking up, right? They should be staying it together. They should be giving it that college try. That's like, no, I want my 20s back. No, I want my 30s back, right? Because either they rushed into marriage or they just weren't ready. They didn't, I say all the time, me and Courtney knew each other since high school. If we'd married out of high school, we'd hate each other. But we married at 32.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You
so
would have destroyed
we're in a
each
different
other.
place, but we both needed to be in that place. So I say that to say there are horror stories, but, it reminds me a lot, like being a lawyer is kind of a lot like being a healer. Like a lot of it, too, is, do you really want to be apart, right? Like, is this, we spend a lot of times in divorces talking to people like, but is this better? Than being apart. And because, grief lives alone. You can grieve a child together or alone. So there are lots of situations and lots of different tales that you hear. I don't want to make it seem like it's all bad because there are folks out there that are going to try to tell you, go back and work at it. Y'all go back to the drawing board, right? Still do it. But anyway, that was my side note.
The mantra that keeps playing over and over in my head is, you remember Debbie Allen in Fame, where she talks about, you want fame? Well, fame costs. And right here, that's how I feel like Andy and I, where we come from when people want to talk about love. Like, y'all want love? Well, love in a committed relationship, it costs. And right here is where you start paying, except this is the best kind of payment, because I think Andy and I both believe that the true fountain, like where all this emanates from, is you. Love of yourself, pouring love and kindness and respect on yourself, falling madly in love with yourself. It's why I have the Love Lab reading at the www.thegildedapsara.com. I love Andy's first love candle was a self-love candle. It's one of my favorite ones. It's a beautiful candle with a wonderful ritual. She'll talk about it as we get into it. And so, Andy, let's move on from the 9 of Wands. Okay, universe and spirit, we get it. We have all been through it. We've been through some things. Let's jump into, Andy, so here's what I want to talk about. We are 30 episodes in on the about 30 episodes in on the podcast. And love, even though it's one of the things I think people consult spiritual advisors, practitioners, psychic and intuitive artists, it's a thing that most people want to talk about and that they seek us for, whether it's for candles or for tarot readings. But it was not even close to our first topic to talk about. Like, I remember when we were planning our topics for winter through spring, Andy was like, no. We're going to do this first. First, we're going to talk about like opportunity. Then we're going to talk about prosperity.
Because the timing is off. We talked about this the other day. Me and Courtney were in the car, who's my husband, y'all. And we were talking about the freaking calendar year, right, that has been created for us and how crazy it is. Like, why does the year start in January? When everything from indigenous, I'm not even going to take it from y'all this time, just African folk, because you know how you can give us all a lot of most of the credit because we are the place of origin. But if you are indigenous in any type of way, you have somehow been trained to know that like winter is resting. Everything in the world is dead. Everything is not moving. And then there is this awakening. Right? There's a warming. The earth starts to warm. Things start, I'm looking at my yard right now, Q, if you look at my yard, right? Nothing just out green. There's a slow creeping, right, of green that etches into your landscape from that deadness. You clear off the deadness. You pull back all the old leaves. You take all the old dirt, you mix it up, you add new fertilizer into it, you maximize on the fact that the earth is ready to regenerate and to start making new things. Birds, trees, bugs, everything's all running around trying to find a place to settle down, mate, and to procreate and bring forth new life or new relationships, right? Or new beginning. But yet, we picked February 14th, which, by the way, was created by the greeting card industry and passed by Congress, to be Valentine's Day. And we picked the name of an old saint out of God knows what, because Saint Valentine has actually nothing to do with, I mean, we know where the Valentine's imagery came from. Venus, pagan religions, indigenous practices. We know where all the names came, but you took it and reversed it 2 months back because you needed to sell cards because nobody's in the store in February. Because you needed to create something to get the restaurant industry was a huge lobbyist for Valentine's Day as well, too, as is the floral industry. It was all created for you. You'll now know that the industry has now moved Valentine's Day there with Super Bowl Sunday to really fuck with your lives, young men. So now you have to worry about the big game and you have to worry about trying to go get flowers. Like, this was all constructed for you in February. So when we were building the calendar to talk, I told Halicue, like, I feel bad selling love candles in February because you shouldn't be in a hibernation role trying to make love decisions about who you want to be or who you want to be. Your body's not blossoming. You're not ready to blossom yet. Your mind should still be resting and gathering energy and taking it into yourself. Right? Which is a great preparation for love work, right? You start burning your love yourself candle in February, but it's a part of the process that we take out because it's the exciting part. The awakening is the exciting part. That part that Halicue talks about on the date, the butterflies and the hope and the optimism. What does that sound like? Astera? Sound a little Easterish? Sound a little new life springish? That's because it is. So anyway, that's what you were getting around to. But that's why I told her I wouldn't wait to have that conversation because first of all, just even in my spirit now talking about it and birds are chirping in the background, it seems like I ordered that soundtrack. This is really just my yard. If you look to model, and we're spiritual people, if we're looking for the cycles and the patterns of our life to change and to manifest, we always want to go back and maximize the cycles that the earth is going through because that is the source. That's one of the sources through our ancestors of our power. So why wouldn't you choose the time that the earth is doing the same work that you were desiring to do? When we're asking for all this love work in February, you're almost working at cross purposes to what the earth is doing. Right? So that's why it takes so much more effort. That's why it feels so forced. You see that whole Galentine's kind of like revolution against Valentine's Day? There's a reason why that feels forced. Halicue, even on our best Valentine's days, it feels forced. It feels very constructed. It doesn't feel, even when me and my husband are like, we're going out to dinner on Valentine's Day, we feel like we're doing it because it's Valentine's Day. It doesn't feel like, it's not the same expression of it. It's more, it's
right. You're right. So much of it is just anxiety. Like we should be going out. Like that's one of the reasons I always love Martha Stewart's like Valentine's Day edition and episode. Cause it's like, what are cool, nice things I can do for people in my life and my house? Like, as opposed to the stress and the hassle of, and you're right. I love that is it necessarily, I'll never forget for Valentine's Day, that's what the girls did. Like they all went out together. They made, mommy, I need pink food coloring. What you need pink food coloring for? Because I'm making chocolate dip pretzels for my friends.
But what's the best way to build your power?
Yeah.
What a cousins
exactly.
do.
Make a circle. Make a circle.
That makes sense. Like, that's why Valentine's Day, that makes sense. Get with your homeboys, gentlemen. I don't want to move you. Get your warlocks together and have long brunch. And
whatever.
On the kind of man you want to be.
Out in the woods.
Whatever it is.
Hunt something. Do whatever y'all do. Do what y'all do.
Like, that makes more sense. And like, so as humans, we feel this pull.
Yeah.
But like this industry and all this other like false stuff, right? Capitalism, whatever you want to call it, is throwing all these reverse. That's why I tell you, like, go to your gut. You are built with that thing on the back of trucks that, that beep when you back up that tells you like, oh, shit is out of whack. That we have that as human beings. So I just use that as an example. And I love you kind of bringing that you drew that from that conversation. Cause I just had this conversation with my husband. He was like, he goes, and what's crazy is most companies that make this money off us, guess when they start their fiscal calendar? Bitch.
Yeah, exactly.
April, they don't start counting their money till March.
Nope, because that's when the taxes come in, and that's when we can determine how lavish of a year we're gonna have.
Ladies and gentlemen, don't get okie doke, right?
Yeah.
Like this is just one of those things. Like get your nice card, do whatever for Valentine's Day if you feel compelled. But I'm just telling you, look at the way that should be a point of beginning to manifest, if nothing else. And I really tell you, like, don't even start manifesting too early while you're still in your hibernation. The only reason why I tell you to even start manifesting is February is because that's when we start putting seeds in the ground, right? Like, that's when you start starting plants to begin in March. Like, make your plans for it then, but it shouldn't be something you're trying to execute by February 14th. Because any gardener will tell you, you plant a seed before the final frost, what happens to it? It dies before it ever gets on the vine.
Get started.
It's not the proper time for it to start. So that's just a little nature, gardening spin on how you should think. Just think about that timing. Think about the earth. Think about what the environment is telling you about that timing. And I think even just that shift, because you're like, most people are like, Andy, you're talking about a month. That's how crops are grown. That's how you eat. Yeah. That 30 days is critical to whether or not half the globe feeds itself, depending on where you live. So, like, just that month could be a powerful thing. Nature is powerful. It's giving you these messages for a reason. I'll shut up now because I could talk about this forever.
But you remember how when we got started, when we were talking about like road opening, and you were talking about the difference between something like, like blockbusting work, or when it comes to fast work with certain things. Sometimes people want fast work, fast money versus like prosperity, or they want this thing right now versus opportunity that's going to lead to things for long term. So what I would like to talk about, and I'd like to get your reaction and your response to, is around love, because this is the way I want to talk about it. Now, Andy has candles. I have readings. If y'all like, but I want this right now. Like, okay, we can absolutely do that. But what Andy and I want for you, and what we wish for you, and what we'd like to invite you to do with us and this podcast over the next couple of episodes, is to settle in to do a little bit of deep work and deep reflection and introspection, and to focus it on you, because that's where we're going to start. My goal, if you were here with me, if I could take care of you for a week, it would be, loving, lavish baths, burning candles, and having those rituals that are purely just for you to lavish love, attention, care, respect all over yourself. My goal, I talk about this all the time, like with tarot and the readings, is to help you fall in love with yourself, to reignite a love affair with yourself. And as Andy will tell you, I've been on that. I've been working on loving myself for a long time, thinking I knew how to do it, knowing I had no idea how to do it. That's where we're starting, because that's a place and a position of power. Andy, what do you think about that versus hot love, how to get what you want like right now? That's the way I'd like for us to take and approach this work. What do you think?
You attract what you are, no matter how you try to cover it up. So if your concept of where love comes from, how it should be sustained, how it feeds itself, right? How it gives back. If that has some trauma to it, guess what love is going to look like for you? It's going to look traumatic. We talk about that, and I talk about this in my work Halicue's done years of work supporting victims of domestic violence. I've been a victim myself. I've had to counsel and help women who have been victims themselves. How we are introduced to love shapes us. And so we have to start with us, because even beknownst to us, we could want something better than what we experienced it. But if we don't understand it, we're still going to attract it, because it's what we know. It is built into what we know. I'll give you an example. I am one of the most annoyingly affectionate people in my family. Since birth, I've been the one in your face, trying to hug you, kiss you, tickle you. Halicue hates tickling because it gives you cancer. That's an inside joke.
That's a long story. We'll talk to y'all about that. That's a long story. Andy loves tickling. I freaking hate tickling.
But to me, in a family that was not raised to show physical affection, which is what we were raised in, no hand holding, no hugging, no, none of that. No, I love yous randomly. That uncontrollable urge in me to be affectionate, even when inappropriate, which is what my husband tells me all the time, because your affection isn't always out. I want affection, because he's a non-tickler too. He don't like to be fucked with. He don't like it. He's like that person. He knows that I am not malicious. He knows I'm not aggravating him. But it took several years of learning what even to this day, as in this last weekend when my husband learns about my trauma growing up, he understands a little bit more about where that comes from. Why Andy is starved for affection. Right? Why, even though there are sometimes that we have to sleep apart, because literally my idea of sleeping is like a pillow I'm hugging in front, a pillow in back, being like, and my husband's like, gosh, you make me feel like I'm in a straitjacket when we sleep. But that's my body.
I comment on that, Josh? I had the same thing. I think it has to do with pregnancy. Like when I was pregnant, I started sleeping with a body pillow and I never got over it. I need a body pillow in front of me. I want to hold something. Every now and then when the pillow situation, we're not going to recap my visit to Andy in Texas. We'll say that for another time. But there was this conversation about, oh, should I hang out with mom, like where she's staying, like at the hotel or at Andy's house? And I was like, yeah, I'm not moving from my sister's house. She has exactly the number of pillows that I require to go to sleep. Every now and then my husband will look at me like with all of my pillows and he goes, hun, I feel like there's something in between us. Yeah, it's my body pillow and don't fuck with it. And open the window, it's too hot.
And if you do it well, you go curate a good pillow collection where not only you have a great pillow, but like your guests have a great collection of pillows because you've really just gotten it down to how you like things. But it's and a lot of people would listen to that and say, hey, Andy, y'all are laughing about that. That's really sad. You're right. It absolutely is, but not uncommon for a lot of us who were raised by baby boomers, right? That was not a generational signature to be affectionate. So when we are talking about working with people who are coming to us as practitioners, when we're asking those questions, well, what did your parents show you about love? What was that like? What was your relationship like with your parents? Because that helps us learn how you oriented to love. How you orient, because people who would meet me on the street would say, okay, of course Andy was raised in lots of affection. Look at her. She's always all over her kids. That's not necessarily where that comes from, right? So the reason why I start there and I say that is because it's super important to know those things about yourself. The reason why it's important to recognize these things, and I went through telling you that story, is like, for instance, someone who saw me from the outside might say, oh, Andy had an amazing introduction to being affectionate. Because look at how she holds her husband's hands. Look how she does. When I know, it comes from a place of deep trauma that I have, created a conditioned response to, that I have learned to have to moderate and manage as an adult, right? So that becomes appropriate. And I continue to struggle and work with that at 46, right? Being emotionally affectionate to boys. There's a point when they love it, then there's a point at 13 or 14, it becomes a different conversation. It was funny, me and Halicue, she said this, why do you feel that way at 12 or 13 that you start not being as affectionate with the boys? Because it worries you. I said, because they're men. I was hugging a 7-year-old yesterday, and now he's got man part, right? Which I'm sure is a lot like how a lot of dads feel with daughters. So it's not just about you and how you process, right? So then that becomes, I've already talked about how others see me. I've talked about how we interact with our children, right? It's one of those things that delta for me now is kind of like this arrow. So if you think about a delta, a triangle that's inside of you, and I tell people when you think about symbology and spiritualism, think about this too. So like a triangle is one of these, like, if it's upside down, it's a chalice. It's open and it's a cup. But if it's kind of like a wedge, it's a sword, we call it a chevron. So when you think about a delta, that's a full triangle, right? It can be that flipped up and down. But when it's not fully complete, a chevron is a driving spear. If you flip it over, a cup is something that's always taking in but doesn't know when to stop. See it? But when you have a chevron that's upside down, it's just a spear, right? It's just a point. It just drives forward to destroy. If it doesn't close off, it doesn't know how to rest. It can never rest. Those are kind of some of the orientations of men and women. And if we don't understand each other, right, and some of these challenges that we naturally come with, there's always going to be an edge driving. And we're always going to be the cup that says we can receive and receive and receive, and we don't know when to say, stop, I'm through receiving. So this is kind of, when we talk about love work and we talk about the symbology and some of these things, it's all a reoccurring design in nature. It's how we're designed, right? So understanding how that design fits to you personally is going to help you be able to navigate love better. That's why with the Love Yourself candle, crystal-wise, it has pink opal in it. I love pink opal. I swear by it. I use rough pink opal in our Love Yourself candle. I just found some. I finally had to go to a vendor to find some very beautiful tumbled pink opal. I love using both because I love the symbology of rough crystals and tumbled crystals. Rough crystals come directly from the earth. They are how they are. They're like our id, right? They're like our 3-year-old unchecked. If our spirit just lived free and we didn't have rules or regulations, that's kind of what I feel about, rough stuff. Pink opal is all about self-healing and self-exploration. It's about looking into the reflection of yourself and seeing what in you needs to be healed and recognizing it and being able to accept it in its wholeness, right? Because healing is not always too fit. That's why there's some songs I feel torn about because I'm like, I love Kelly Clarkson's song, I'm broken and I'm beautiful because I love the message. But then I don't love the message because you're not broken. just because something has happened to you, right? Like just because you're traumatized. I get the point, Kelly. But just because something has happened to you does not mean you're broken. It's how you feel, but it's not the truth. It's not the reality. You're not broken. You're still here. You're living, you're breathing, you're thriving through it. The thing that we have to choose though, when we think about healing is also accept, right? I know for me, love is going to require a certain amount of affection. So if I continue to keep putting partners in my life or relationships in my life with people who don't have affection, I'm going to go look somewhere else for it. So how do I create that in my life? Now, I would prefer that to get it from the people I love. So we create and we commune and we come up with, and I'm constantly manifesting ways to find an appropriate place for that to land. So I say to begin with yourself, and I talk about self-healing that way because I want to be clear. Every time we're talking about healing, what we understand about love, that's not a declaration you're broke. You learned what you learned because it's what the people who raised you had to give, and it's what they knew about love. It doesn't mean you got to take them off your ancestor altar. It doesn't mean that you don't have to process through it. But you do have to understand that that's what they gave you. Because if you want something different, you're going to have to build it.
I love when you start talking a little bit about the correspondences that are in the candles because they give people an idea, and we'll get into that. We'll get into that more specifically. This is such a huge topic. It's another reason I'm like, yeah, like how can we possibly expect to talk about this in one episode? So in terms of like getting your mind right, I want to offer up a few. I was going through the deck to see like what are the cards I like to use as totems, but there's so many. Like there's so many cards and so many symbols in the tarot. Like every single card in the tarot can be a love card. Like every single card can be a work card. And I was trying to go through to kind of come up with a mini deck, but there's way too many. So I'm just going to pick the 3 cards. I think that if you're just starting, like, because I really want for this part of the conversation to be just our recommendations to you to start thinking about this, getting your mind, your mindset right. And I want to, before I get into the tarot cards, I just want to follow up on something Andy just said, like some of the things you can do and talking about like our own ancestry, our own unique DNA, the love stories that we saw. That's one of the things I'm going to recommend that folks do. Look at the love stories, quote unquote, that you have seen in your life. What are the love stories? What are the love stories of your grandma, grandpa? I mean, I could tell you like what about now my grandma, my grandpa, Jones had a very long enduring tale and story of love, right? Like they had 7 children. They were educators. They built this life for themselves. They were divorced, but my grandpa's feeling was like, this is my wife. And yeah, we're going to be married together. Like at the end of their marriage, at the end of their lives, they were still having dinner at like our family table. But their story began with a mock wedding, right, Andy? Isn't that right? Like it began with a mock wedding at like Alcorn. And the funny story is the sororities and fraternities needed to make a mock wedding and do like a picture and take a picture.
It was Grandpa was a captain. He was pledging, and his big brothers told him he had to find the most beautiful girl on campus and ask her to marry her right then. Hey, he basically had to find her and get her to say yes.
Yeah.
In whatever public place they were in. Yeah. And so in this case, in college, people still went to the cafeteria, which kind of blows you. I mean, you have to understand our grandparents were in our 40s. So this was a historic HBCU in North Mississippi. This was at Alcorn State University. So it's an all-black college. Just to set this up for you, it's an all-black college. They're all Greek. My grandma's in an academic sorority. So this is a big deal, right? So they still go to the lunchroom in college, right? Like you live your whole life so it's, I don't want people to kind of get the like it was a big deal. It's like going to go ask the prettiest girl on your college campus, would you go out on a date with you in the middle of a football game? Yeah. It was a big deal. So that kind of was the premise of how he approached, which sounds like a great, wonderful love story, right? Till you fast forward to he went to go they date, they fall in love. And this is the part that me and Courtney laugh about is my grandpa tells the story after she passed away. To this day, she goes, now, you know what Daddy said? That's the meanest one I got you, sure? I said, God damn. So,
exactly. Can you imagine?
Anyway, I'll let you finish, Q.
And Andy, that picture, I don't know what it was like when you first saw it, because this was memorialized. Like there was a photo of this. And I'm not even going to get into how difficult it must have been back then to take a photograph and actually get it.
It was in the college yearbook.
I was in the college yearbook. The first time we saw this photograph, it was ripped in half. Like it had been ripped in half and then taped back together, like several. This is what my understanding was, that it was like ripped apart and like taped back together like several times. So one of the things, and I'm just going to say to y'all, even some of the things that I say to my sisters that are 20 years younger than us, and that I'm starting to talk about with my daughters. If you have no idea where to start with the own love stories in your life, in your family. Go back and look at them. And doing the work that Andy and I do in our own lives, our own marriages for other people. Yeah, we go back to what was our parents' like first marriage, like what is their second marriage been like?
Not only that, I remember being on a car trip. I think we were going to go see you graduate. And I remember being in it because it was like in a 15-passenger van, which we never do unless we're going to go see somebody graduate. So it was all the aunts. It was Aunt Marilyn, Aunt Carolyn, Mom. I think like somebody married into the family. I think Aunt June was there. And I asked, how did you know the person that you wanted to marry was the person that you were going to marry? And I never remember a piece of advice that my Aunt Carolyn said that stuck with me my whole life. And it was because of her marriage. Because Uncle Greg is such, like, if we ever talk about him, of course we're going to talk about him because there's going to be an episode probably all about it. But he's like a peacock. He is a rooster. He is a chongo. He is
oh my God.
Whatever.
Uncle Greg is a bird of paradise. He is a bird of paradise.
The maleness of maleness. And my Aunt Carolyn is so quiet and so reserved and so introvert. Like they are complete opposites. And so I think I just, as a young woman, I really took her answer to heart because I kind of felt like, because it rang true to me. She was like, it's going to be the person you least expect, Andy. You're going to spend your whole life thinking you're going to fill in this blank this way. And the person that you marry is going to be completely different than what you expect. And I was like, now as an adult, knowing that, well, shit, because mostly everything that you saw was a little traumatic with love. So of course the person is probably going to be completely opposite than what you knew. It makes sense now, right? Like in how we choose what complements us.
Yeah.
But at the same time, those were conversations we were having. Now I will all say my aunt, scoreboard, probably, the exception of my June who married my uncle, like, probably hit or miss. Try to be nice. Halicue can see the look I'm making on my face. But
Jesus. Yeah.
What she said was not untrue. The person that she married was the complete opposite of her. Had I married someone the complete opposite of me, I might be in the same boat, right? But it's different for different people. So I also say that as you were taking that advice and you're having these conversations, think of the person that's bearing you the information. Who you ask about relationships matters. I've seen so many women, unfortunately, in my life who had conversations with me about men from positions of regret. I don't remember a lot of women having excited conversations with me about getting married. Even when my mom got married for the second time, when I was a teenager, no less, like there was a few brief times when they dated, like she would be super excited and it seemed like dating was supposed to be, but I guess it was so odd to us that that's what even made that seem not storybookish because we were just not used to seeing our mom happy. And when I say that, I want that to say that is a lot. That's a reality for a lot of women of color out there. I hate to say it. We were not set up. Like the storybook idea of marriage wasn't what we saw. It wasn't what we were raised around. It wasn't what we were hearing echo to us. So we knew something was out there for us, but for the most part, we knew it probably wasn't going to hit the mark of all this propaganda in media.
Andy, did you ever feel like everything we saw and heard was relationships are dangerous, men are...
But think about it though.
Men are not to be trusted. You will end up vulnerable in the whole situation. Yet everybody still felt compelled to be coupled up.
Someone talked about this on the internet though, and I was like, see, if you explain it like that though, but think about it, Q. The reason why we were taught that way is because everything in modern media that's created by the patriarchy tells you love is great. Follow that feeling in your stomach. But if you do, you're a whore. Like, let your love grow free. But if you are free, you're a prostitute. Like, dude, love should be rewarding and
men don't want that. Don't give them the cookie. Yeah.
Everything is at cross purposes with the patriarchy because the one thing they're trying to do is to get you to drop your pants, but they don't want anyone who has ever dropped their pants. Like it is this crazy mix. So for a certain extent, the messages we got from women were a leveling agent to the craziness that men were creating for us. around love and relationships. And I'm talking from the perspective of a man, so from a woman. So I can't, I can't tell you about the opposite perspective of a man. So I'm going to tell you from this perspective. So for everything we heard from our community, Q had to level out that. And I heard someone say it on the tickety talk, and I was like, God damn it, you got it right. If you were talking to somebody about guns, you wouldn't be like, explore guns, get to know guns. They could be great protectors. You'd be like, this shit is dangerous. It can kill you. And you need to learn how to use it properly and how to recognize it's safe. You need to learn how to recognize the appropriate ways to use it. And you need to understand the consequences of of having this for protection. And that, it may shoot people you love. You may shoot yourself, right? We go through all these crazy ass conversations. But with love, we want to have a different conversation. We have those conversations with women because we are handing them a loaded gun as far as they are concerned, to their reputation, to their bodies. I live in the state of Texas. Women, we've had our first woman this month that was arrested for having a medical miscarriage. She's being charged for murder because she had a miscarriage. She's being charged for murder in January for a miscarriage she had in December. No one suffers the consequences of love like we do as women. But yet we're given this Disney Twitter-pated view, usually created by men, of how we should, this really conflicting, weird kind of, let's put it, landmine strewn idea of what love should be. And that one I will call, look, I will say for white women, black women, purple. Yeah, I hate to say that because it's when you say purple, it's women of all shades. Yeah. As far as the patriarchy is concerned, we have been fed a bunch of bullshit. But on top of that, for women and indigenous women and women of color, where this is especially dangerous for you because we don't control the power structures where sex and love come into play, right? It can be almost insidious. But yet we're running around with this Disney Twitter-pated pink-hued view of things that we're giving women. So that's what I tell you, when we're talking about self, you also have to think about the consequences of love differently. We make babies, most of us, that biologically identify as women. If you don't biologically identify as a woman, but you identify as a woman, and you understand the danger to even people in the trans community, the trans women die every day because they now understand. And that comes from and I would tell you I don't think that's directly a part of their maleness. I think that's directly of the womanness that they're taking on. It's dangerous out here in these streets for women when you talk about love and emotion and sex. So that's also why you also need to start with self, because love, we always think of a receiving, but we don't think anything else we are bringing into our life. What do we do first? Protect ourselves.
Yeah, I have a recommendation. I want to know what you think about this. And this is especially for younger folks that are out there in the game. And how we want to do, that's another reason we love our tools, our practices, because we can take them and use them to know ourselves so we can upend some of these things and start undoing some of this damage that patriarchy has done. And one of the things that I love talking about with my own daughters and with other young folks that come for readings, I encourage them to take power back. Like, even in terms of like, going to meet the family, like going to go check out, like that's something the patriarchy and society tells us is, it's a badge of honor. Like when he invites you to like meet your, to meet parents and, meet grandparents and come interact with their family. I like to encourage people, and this especially goes under if you don't know where to start, like with love work, if you're in it with somebody and you're trying to begin from a seat and a position of power, when you go to do that first visit, because so many people are working out there with you in your relation and in a love relationship, they're still working out shit with their parents. Like, so they're still working out stuff with their own parents, their own like relationships. So when you go into their home, instead of you stressing yourself out, and don't get me wrong, because Andy and I, we talked about earlier on in winter, if you want to go in with some power, sure, there's all kind of stuff we can do to help you, like, to do like, sweeten yourself up to like certain people or whatever. But when you go, especially for that first visit, as an intuitive and a spiritual person, you need to be gathering as much information as you are focused on giving information to them. You need to be looking at what's the interaction in this home. Like if you're going into like to meet their folks, meet their people, meet their friends, this is when using your intuition and using your gifts can be very important. Like, what is going on in their house? What is the relationship like between their parents? Where do they fall within the birth order? When you walk into their spaces and their environments, even if it's in a restaurant, how do you feel like when you walk in? Like, do you feel feelings of dread? Do you feel a happiness, excitement? Do you feel like people are hiding something? These are things I think that are super important, and they put you in more of a position of strength. Instead of thinking yourself as somebody that's being interviewed, you need to be thinking about yourself as the interviewer. Is this like a space and an energy you want to come into? Andy, what do you think about that?
Well, and I get wary of this because we have to teach our kids how to practice this. So first and foremost, for those who are doing this as a parent, first of all, understand this is practice. Your kid is not on the auction block, nor is any other kid on the auction. When you are doing this, when children are dating, it is an extension of checking their online presence. It's about knowing what's trending. Are hookers trending? Or skanks? Or are good young ladies trending? Right? It is not about, and I say that because it's not about putting this woman on some type of interrogation. We had these jokes of like, I think of Bad Boys when Will Smith comes out as the drunk uncle, right? Which might be apropos considering current events, but we won't get on that. But it's Martin Lawrence, right? And he's meeting the little girl's boyfriend. What's your name? And I'm Uncle Mike. He comes out with a Hennessy bottle and he's got a wife beater on. He's showing all that. And it's a part of the process, right? He's trying to terrify the little young man going out. We are not there to traumatize these children around rituals of dating that we went through. The idea is, and I love how Halicue does this because Halicue always focuses on her girls. First of all, you know who you are. Don't be pumped going into anybody's house because you know who you are, right? You are the best thing that you bring to the table. So if you're raising your kids to, in power, they will show that. The thing I hate is when we turn that we introduce the ritual of how we date and introduce each other to our children. So think about that ritual as you're introducing it. Like Halicue is introducing that based on the fact that she wants her children to walk into that powerful, but she also wants them to use their intuition to use it to gather information. Those are great two skill sets they should be. And hopefully the other parent is not making Hallie feel as if she's being examined. Because it's nothing wrong with examining, because from parents, our job is different. We know they're probably not getting married. We know they're probably not launching off into a lifelong relationship when they're in high school, right? This is about teaching them the ritual of what to look for in people, how to present yourself, how to look at environments and learn from environments as you move into a relationship with someone. But it's not about hazing someone's kid. It's not about delivering your trauma about how you were introduced into dating, right? Intimidating people, trying to make them scared. You better have my daughter home by. None of that is healthy. And it sets bad. It just, when we talk about gender roles and how this all happens, it starts there. It has its prickly little fingers in. Does dad show up with a gun at the door, right? Is mom sitting there acting like the daughter is someone competing for the affection of her son? Like first of all, that's reasons for therapy, but that's your shit. Don't teach your kids your shit in a dating process because they take it into adulthood. So that's what I will say first and foremost about that process that Halicue is teaching. But I think you have to think about your perspective in that role. Now, if you are dating, that's different. I will tell you where Halicue is talking about meeting parents as a badge of honor. To me, that was a red flag. And I say that because it depends on timing, right? We've been dating for 6 months. I might want to meet your mom. We've been dating 2 weeks. I'm not trying to meet your mom. And if you're trying to get me to meet your mom, I'm worried. So I think that there are sometimes too, like even those rituals that we create, just like we talk about it with kids, be intentional, right? As you were going out to seek. And I think that comes from too, knowing yourself first. Halicue's creating that position of power for her girls that belongs to them. They take that into that experience of meeting a parent. Ergo, you too. When you enter into a relationship, part of one of the candle rituals, Q, for love yourself is one of the beginning parts of the ritual is to begin to journal. But I tell people, because I love spatial visualization. Imagine a date that you can create in your head where someone is asking you every question you've died to be asked since you were a kid. What do you love? What's your favorite color? What makes you excited? What are the things that give you butterflies in your stomach? Just think, we've all had that idea of like a perfect date. I wish my husband would ask me about this today. I wish my husband would ask me about my jewelry. But when you do that, do it from the point of what if you could create and literally manifest on paper the experience you wanted to have with your person. and start with a deep dive of everything you want them to want to know about you. You get what I'm saying? That's different, kid. Not what you want people to know about you, because you're a Leo. You got a list of, oh, these are 20 things you should know about me, and I'm perfect in every single way. But that's not you. You get what I'm saying? What do you want people to know about you? And we talk about this a lot because we usually miss it with our parents. Like we, as adults, we have this deep desire, like, I wish my parents were truly interested in who I was, not my job, not like this. Okay, start there. So you think about that in terms of your parents, but we also seek that in our lover too, right? Or our partner. We want them to genuinely know about us. So what do you want them to want to know about you, right? Then you take that, and when you begin the love ritual, you know what you have to do? Seek the answers to those questions. Because we want people to know that about us, but very rarely do we celebrate the answers. I get goosebumps. I love for my husband to ask me about my candles jewelry. Does he understand it? No, which is probably why he doesn't ask, because he doesn't feel confident. But I love for when he's interested in the artistic things that I do.
Yeah.
Because I feel like it's a talent and a side of myself I don't get to show all of the time.
No.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's a beautiful, I don't ever share that with him. I have now, because I've said it in a podcast to 50,000 people. So what if I started my love ritual for this month with my husband to answer that question and myself? And then that way I know why I need that. Why do I need that? Because it's something unanswered in me. It's something I'm still vulnerable about because I'm new as an art. I'm just now sharing my art with the world. So it makes me, and I need him to love and support and wrap himself around that for me. Do you get what I'm saying? So by asking that question, by seeking to know why is that important to me, I now know what I need from him. I need him to ask me that, because I also need him to tell me, I think it's beautiful that this is beautiful to you. I see this courage in you. I see this growth in you. That's how that conversation, but it's got to start with the conversation with me first, right? Because I need to know why that's so important to me. So that's kind of why the ritual starts with that. Imagine someone, all the things that you seek for in a lover, imagine those things that you truly want to know about yourself and start writing them down and examining. And then that's what you're going to start. That's what you're going to start when you're doing your visualization around your ritual, when you actually light your candle and you're working with your stones, the herbs are working in your candles. That's really the levels of work that you're going through. And every time you light that candle, especially if you get a novena and you're working on it over some moon cycles, you are learning about you. You are learning self. You're learning what you love. You're going to love, like, oh God, when I first wrote this first moon cycle, I thought I wanted to know that about myself. I've examined that. I don't know that about myself. That's something that when you get to your list, you're going to realize there's lots of things, right? As you cycle through that spell work that you are learning about yourself. But then you'll also learn to be able to articulate that when you do meet the person that needs to know, right? And that's where that comes from, where it trips me out when I read these magazine articles. What to say on your first date? Fuck, if you were thinking about yourself and what you want all the time, you shouldn't have to have a script. Girl, let me go back to my manifestation journal, day 3. I love people who love asking me about art. How do you feel about art? Is art huge in your life, right? Have you ever dated an artist? What do you know about? Like those, that's where that comes from. So that's why you need to know those things about yourself. Because when you're expressing those, it's different being at a date going, oh, my name's Andy, and, I like to make candles. And there's a difference between going, I love to really explore people's relationships to some conditions in their life. And so I take that work and channel it into candle. So that's kind of the manifestation in my care for others. I'm a healer. That's a different conversation because I know that about myself. You get what I'm saying? Whereas 10 minutes ago, I just would have introduced myself as a Chandler. And this is something I'm passionate about. I always tell people, if you are looking for someone who is going to know the depths of you, start looking to understand your depths so you can recognize when someone understands themselves. Because how quickly do you know when you're sitting beside someone who truly is not reciting something from you off of an internet page or their resume? They're really talking about themselves. You'll know because you do. You know, because you're having those conversations and it will ring true. It will sound as if someone is doing some self-exploration, not just preparation. And let's be honest, I want to be fair. Not everybody is sitting around doing the same candle ritual with you, with these wonderful candles made by myself, having these deep inner conversations with themselves. But guess what? It'll help you recognize the ones out there that don't always have to be the candle ritual, but they're doing some sort of reflection. They have the ability to understand the fact that you're doing that reflection, right? So I just wanted to just jump in there and kind of explain like these tools we're talking about. Same thing
Yeah.
with getting love reading. You know, in my daily job, we call these data points. They're bits of information. They're great and valuable, but you have to take all your data points and all your learning together, right, to apply it to your understanding of yourself. Halicue can give you a love reading all day long if you're not taking that and really going, okay, let me apply what Halicue is saying to me. Even if I don't want to hear it today, because I wanted her to tell me that you know, Lakeith Stanfield was going to be my husband in 2 years. She didn't tell me that today. She told me I need to be focusing on blah, 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 blah. And so all of these are tools and data points, but you've got to be able to take in the data and do the reflection of self with that data, right? Because if not, it's just information on a page. It's information from the cards. It's just information from your candle if you're not going to apply it to yourself. Think through it, chew on it.
Which is one of the reasons I love tarot so much, because for me, and it's the reason like I called like my first club on Clubhouse, my home on Geneva, Tarot Power Soul. I love tarot because it helps you open a portal into your own deep inner universe. I love it. Not so much because what it helps me tell other people about themselves, but what it helped me learn about myself. Also, ANDI just gave you literally a mini spell right there, like that journaling exercise that's a part of the ritual with her candle. Like that was really deep and powerful. They totally pay for that, so I hope y'all got that mini spell, a mini ritual that she just gave you, which is so freaking powerful. And it made me think about, because ANDI's right, so much of this and what my goal and my desire, especially as a reader, as a diviner, as a practitioner, to help you do is to, use the cards and use the readings to help you further understand yourself so you can have what it is you want and love. And 3 of the cards that I love to use, and when I'm doing the love lab with people, 3 of the cards that I use to inspire and to give me revelatory information with that connection to spirit and that connection to you, to give you answers. There are 3 cards that I absolutely love for that. One of them, to me, really connected to what ANDI was talking about in doing that kind of ritual and that exercise and that preparation, like talking about your, when you know yourself and you understand what are the things about you that are fascinating, what are the questions you wish that people would ask so they can understand who you are. I think about the 9 of Pentacles. She's a woman that is confident. She's mature. She knows herself. She is built or is building her own comforts, her own financial security around her, and she has options. She has suitors. There's the beautiful, sexy falcon that is on her left hand, and down below her in the garden is the more slow-moving, like less sexy, but still a wonderful, viable, like option. 2 very different, like love options for her. And I love that card for that. And I think it connects with what ANDI says. Like you're trying, and I like to use this card because we're trying to get you here in a position where you have choices, where you feel as though you're sitting in a position of power. And because you're not looking to someone else for wealth or prosperity or to get you what it is you want, you're in that powerful, confident position of self-love yourself. Like that is why we love this card. And so if I was going to say, if you're to get started, like you're starting to pull some correspondences together to get yourself like excited about doing this love work, the 9 of Pentacles is one I'd like for you to focus on. Another card that I really love is the Knight of Pentacles. This is about action, movement, but it's slow. It's methodical. It's considerate. It's thoughtful. When we're thinking about like what it is we want to come in, what we want to manifest, what we want to bring in terms of love, I love using this card as something to look at, to journal about, because this isn't a fast moving night. This is a night on a beautiful, strong, actually very exciting black horse overlooking a tilled field. The land has been prepared. Andy's laughing in the background. She's like, you were talking.
Is the black horse exciting?
It is. Hey, Andy, look at that freaking horse. Of all the horses of all the nights, this is the horse you want to be sitting on. This horse is strong, steady, black encompasses
That message came through clearly from Spirit and how you said black
Did
horse.
y'all get that? Encompasses all the colors. His feet are on the ground. He wants to build this knight, and the horse that he's sitting on wants to be, he's a stallion. Look at Andy giving y'all stallion teas in the background. Wants to build something stable, lasting. This knight wants to plant the acorn in order to get the mighty oak. They are there for the journey. They are there for the journey. They're not just excited about sowing the seed. They're excited about watching it grow, nourishing it, and yielding a crop that is going to feed a family, which will spawn generations. So this is where I'm coming from. This is another correspondence that if you don't have anywhere to start, but you want to start someplace, I'd like for you to
Which
think about
brings me back
starting
to my
there.
point. You got to be prepared for the stallion now. Because the stallion, once they dig
Yes.
into, will also bury you in the backyard before they give you up to somebody else because they love you. They plan long range terms. So it's also about being prepared, right? There's a stallion point of your life, and there's probably some times when you're trying to chase nags. And that's part of it too, right? But it's also about timing. I
Yeah.
love that you shared that.
Yeah. That's the night that I get excited about. There's 4 nights in the tarot and everyone's like, ooh, what about this one? What about that one? I was like, what we want for you and what we're trying to pull in is love, commitment, which is, I'm just telling you generally what most of my clients are looking for and what they're asking for or what to be looking out for. And finally, the last kind of thing, like if you have no idea where to start, a card that's really good to investigate is the one that nobody likes. We generally get excited when it comes up, but I feel it's really important. The 3 of Swords. What are our heartaches? What have we gone through in the past? What are the first chapters of our love life? What's happened? Are some of these swords still stuck in there? Right? Is our hearts, are we still is it still functioning as some kind of pin cushion? We're still looking for love, but we're still aching and bleeding from old lovers, old issues, old wounds from childhood. What's going on there? These are good uh, images, symbols, totems, correspondences to get started with. Andy, as we get ready to jump into part 2 next week, what are some of if you were to encourage people to start looking around them, to start experimenting with or bringing some different correspondences, especially like herbal or plant spirits into and around their environment, just to start looking at, playing with, doing some research on, figuring out what turns you on, what would you recommend for people to get ready for our conversation next week?
Getting ready for love work is all about kind of being open to receive and kind of not, because you were talking about blockbusting work with road opening. Let me come back around the corner. Sorry, it got windy again. My backyard's like a wind tunnel. That's why I'm over here in this weird ass corner. So when you talk about like, when you were asking me like, is there some type of equivalent to love work with like road opening where there's blockbusting, whatever, we usually ask people at the beginning of love work to be open. And you know this from working with lots of people in love readings. You obviously know why, right? Because people usually come in with a lot of preconceived notions, right? They may come in with their own fears or hangups or anxieties around this type of love work. So I like herbs that open you to love work. So Damiana is one of those that is a big one for stripping down inhibitions, right? People think of it as, oh, it gets you in the mood. It's really more about weakening those things that are anxiety points around love, right? Stress, fear, all of these things that keep us from truly being uninhibited, right? So Daviana is not like, people take it like it's, what's the name of the old stuff back in high school we used to talk about all the time? Spanish fly. It's not necessarily that. Like, it does a lot. It is a fiery herb. It does a lot. Now, if you are into that zone, it will help amplify those feelings, but really think of it as really helping bring down inhibitions as it's raising up like that energy. So Daviana is a great one. I love red raspberry leaf. That's one that people all too often pass over. Not only is it a sweet herb, and we forget about the sweetness of love, the newness of it, like that fruity uplift to it. I use it in a lot of my smoke blends, but I love red raspberry leaf. Cleansing always needs to be a part of this, but think about more sweet cleansing. So I like really aromatic herbs, but still ones that are around calming, right? So lavender is a great one for that. Like lavender blossoms are great for that. It's calming, it's relaxing. It also allows you to be open. Rose petals are a traditional kind of like aphrodisiac, herb for aphrodisiac. It's got a beautiful scent to it. I've been using it in teas a lot with lavender. So rose, lavender, and orange are wonderful flavor and scent combinations. So orange is bringing us back to kind of like our African spirituality, right? Like Oshun, oranges, pumpkins, anise, like those things that we really think about fall. Those are actually really great correspondences to a lot of our African goddesses who deal with like love, beauty, celebrating that about yourself. Now, I know also Oshun is like the goddess of marriage and all these things. That's a little advanced. Let's think about it in terms of newness, beauty, love, an appreciation, right? Even like an appreciation of the arts and singing and displays. I think Oshun, when we're talking about just our self work, her ability to be either this person that shows great emotion, right? Halicue talks all about really about her screech, right? When she feels like she has been done unjustly, but yet there is this beauty in her voice when she sings of the arts and patronage. I want you to think about that kind of Oshun energy when beginning your love work, that that ability to appreciate. How do I put it, Q? Like, when you're a patron of the arts, that ability to look upon and to appreciate the beauty, you're looking to do that yourself. And you'll always see the imagery of the mirror with Oshun, right? Reflection, looking upon yourself. Now, other indigenous goddess imagery that I love, the butterfly woman in Native American indigenous practice is another one, just basically of metamorphosis and coming to being. And I love moon goddess work for love work. Nighttime is the right time, but just like we have that Oshun energy, which is the day of appreciation and kind of like you're fluttering and you're peacocking in the light of day, I think at night, as you do that in the day, I think there also needs to be a balance of the moon inner reflection. So I always say that when you're starting love work, sometimes we go too fiery, right? But we forget balance. So just as we are fiery and it's getting warm and it's spring and we're opening up, are you still finding time to reflect? At the end of the day, are you doing like your mirror moon reflection work? Are you doing your nighttime meditations about, not only did you do this really deep searching appreciation of yourself, what did you learn from it? Are you reflecting on it, right? Like Halicue's dope, but where does her dopeness come from? Is it a response to trauma? Is it just her natural ability to do these things? She's going to find out all those things. But you have to have that brightness and appreciation, but you also have to balance that with reflection. So when you start talking about those herbs, that's where the lavender comes in to balance out your Damiana, right? If you're working with red raspberry leaf, I also tell people, balance that out again with your lavender tea at night so you can calm and focus and do your recitation and your writing. Same thing with roses. I love collecting them by color. I love using the hot pinks and the reds and whatever with my tea that I'm heating up, to just really appreciate and love during the day. But I also have a purple rose bush and some really flesh tone colored roses that are more of a calm, neutral palette, right? To work with that kind of energy too. Same thing with your candle work. Now, we make the Love Yourself candle. It's got catnip in it, which is used in a lot of love work as well too. Catnip is one of those herbs that it's great for love work, but it's also an herb about healing and acceptance, right? It's also about one of those attraction herbs, right? Like, have you ever seen cats with catnip? Catnip is to cats as THC is to people. So think of it that way. It's also one of those herbs too that's about opening inhibitions, calm, that type of thing. So I like catnip in tea as well too. It's one of those herbs you can alternate. Now, one caveat I always have, look for contraindications of all herbs with whatever you currently may be taking. Most of us still have our foot in the matrix, so we're taking over-the-counter stuff, and we might be getting into herbs too. Make sure you look up. I always have a good herbal reference book or just a good herbal online reference. If you were looking up information about herbs online, Google Scholar is what you want to use. Google Scholar only pulls scientific papers and doctor's articles. So if you are looking up things about herbal medicine, don't use homemade Google, which is going to have ads and everything else. Use Google Scholar and look up contraindications. There's been some recent stuff online with people making some cool stuff that is literally eating your face off online because they're listening to people on TikTok When you're looking up things online, use Google Scholar. And it's going to give you scientific papers. Are they hard to read? Sometimes, yes. But Google has a lot of like, hit the button and it will give you a definition, right? So I say that because if you're taking high blood pressure medicine, like some of these might have contraindications for specifically what you're taking. Because most medicines, even though they got a lot of extra icky stuff in them, a lot of them are derived from other herbs. So you need to learn how they work together too. Just don't go buy an herb because I say it and start incorporating it without looking at how you're using all your herbs together.
Or to buy some crazy oil and spray to shove up your vagina or something. Because Andy and I would also like to say, there's nothing wrong with your vagina. Like,
and most problems with your vagina, I hate to tell you, men are causing. It's what you're depositing in there.
Yeah, I mean, you can.
It's about internal taking care of
nothing. It's not cursed.
And there's some things that, are they good? Like, I put it like this? I like steam baths. I can understand where yonis come in. Should you have to be yoniing like on some 2 times a week, 6-month schedule? No, your yoni does not like require steam wraps every month like your hair. So, there's just some things that I think when you're talking about doing things, the more natural your approach to incorporating them into your life is usually a good signifier that they belong there, right? Because nature, it can be eruptive and violent sometimes, but it's very much about harmony and symbiosis. So most things that are good natural remedies are the easiest to take. They don't require a whole bunch of hoops for you to jump through. So if you got to go see mama, sister, whoever in a corner to do something certain way and turn around 3 times and jump up and down, you probably are in a zone of doing something that is not a natural process, right? That's something that you're looking for a little extra. Which, hey, in certain situations might be necessary, not the ones we're talking about.
This has been the topic that I have to be honest. I think Andy and I probably so far had the least, I hope it's okay to say that, Andy, least kind of natural enthusiasm about doing.
None at all.
Because our first response was really, we got to do it? What? But it's interesting. We have gone way over our normal time because we actually do have a lot to say about this. So we hope that get this conversation about getting your mind right.
That's Halicue's way of saying, see, look, I was right. So I acknowledge that.
See, as Andy likes to say,
take that.
Look at that. Look at how nice my little sister was to me right there. Growth. That's Andy said, look at that growth. Look at all this growth. Because, we've been growing. I'm telling y'all, we want y'all to grow along with us. Y'all, I don't know if what it comes across is that Andy and I have it all figured out. We have it all we're on our own. We're on our own spiritual journey. We be taking we take the road less traveled sometime, and we want y'all to come right along with us for the challenges as well as to receive the benefits of the decades that we have been on this earth and the things that we've seen, the things we've healed within ourselves. We're helping others heal. And we are thrilled y'all are on the journey with us. Next week, we're going to be talking about really getting into some of the nitty gritty of our favorite love rituals and some of our love work. So we'll be talking about love altars. We'll be talking about spiritual baths. We'll be talking about some candle work and getting into the nitty gritty. But for right now, let's get our minds right. Y'all start. Y'all know how we do. Get into that little mini ritual that Andy gave you. We're going to make sure we highlight it and we shout it out. Start taking a look at, the Love Yourself candle at www.tallulaahoyo.com. Go over to www.thegildedabsora.com. Take a look at the Love Lab reading and, go back and listen to this episodes. We're going to put on the different timestamps in the show notes where we're talking about some of this stuff. So how to go back to the ritual, start gathering some of these correspondences, start looking what's in and around you and your environment. You don't, like Andy always says, you don't have to buy a lot of new stuff. Go into your own kitchen cabinet and see if you have some of the things that we're talking about there. Andy was talking about Damiana, rose, sometimes vanilla, like she said, orange, looking into doing some research around who are the deities, the spirits that are close to you that you're interested in. Oshun, like Andy said, is certainly one for me. We have some good tarot correspondences for you to get into. So really enjoy this episode and get ready to get your mind right so we can do this ritual, these rituals and this spell work, and to help you start taking an active, inspired, and intentional steps towards bringing in the love it is that is healthy, fair, equitable, one in a love relationship, one in which you share power and that you feel respected and valued, and where you're able to stand into your own power. We love y'all so much. Can't wait to see you next week on The Pillars, the Porch, and the Path. Okay, witch. This is an episode you should definitely marinate in all this week. And for real, use your tools. If you are really wanting to take action on your love life, don't wait. We've got about 10 plus days to use this waxing moon energy to jumpstart your spell work. So go on over to www.tallulahoryo.com to pluck up your self-love candle from Andi's collection. And as all good witches, hoodoos, and mystics know, step 2 after mental preparation is divination. So hot step it on over to my site at www.thegildedapsara.com to schedule your love lab reading. And if you're wanting more of our potent Pillars, Porch, and the Path energy to sustain and inspire you during the week, you can email us at pillarsporchpath@gmail.com and tell us what is on that magical, mystical mind of yours. We also want you to follow us on social media. All of our handles and links are down there in the show notes. And of course, we want you to join our new home on the Geneva app. This is the podcast's brand new and ultra fabulous free community that Andi and I are creating just for you. This is where you can find our pre-show shenanigans and the extra special content that we are revealing just to you. All right, you boss witches, heavenly hoodoos, and sexy AF sorceresses and spellcasters. Join us right here on our porch next week, same day, same time, on the Pillars, the Porch, and the Path.